Page 12 at the bottom, page 14 on top. We are on okay, we're going to start 5 lines from the top of the page. The few lines we learned, we're going to go quickly, but I want to start from the beginning of something. At the beginning of Parag Gimel, now the Rebbe explained that the neshama of a person is composed of 10 levels. Why is the neshama composed of 10 levels? Because the neshama comes from the worlds of godliness, and there's 10 levels in the world. Therefore, there's 10 levels in the neshama. 3 of intellect and 7 emotions. And now the Rebbe started explaining what the intellectual levels are. Chachma, Bina, and Das. And we learned 2 weeks ago, Chachma is 2 words, Koach Ma, a power of nothingness, meaning it's the initial flash, the brainstorm. Bina is when it's broadened in a depth and length to understand it properly. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe says, Chachma and Bina are called Av va'em, father and mother. Okay, father gives the seed, which is like a yud, the drop. The mother broadens the baby, the seed, 9 months in pregnancy. So she broadens the seed. That's Bina, understanding it properly. And when you have Chachma and Bina, you give birth to emotions. So the emotions, the midas, are called the children of the father and mother, which is Chachma and Bina. And this is what he says. How do you give birth to midas? How does the intellect give birth to feelings of love and fear and awe? How does that happen? So he says like this. Again, these few lines we learned, and I'm going to go quickly and we'll continue. The intellect of the seichel, when it meditates and delves its mind deeply, Hashem, into the greatness of Hashem, the way God permeates the world, Seviv kolam encompasses the world. We learned the finite level, the infinite level, and everything in the world is considered nothing compared to God. So when you meditate, meaning you're using your Chachma and Bina to meditate into the greatness of Hashem, Neldov in the Seirah, it becomes born and awakened. Midas Yira Harememis B'meicha U'machshavtei. You awaken the fear of God, the awesomeness of Hashem, of Leila Ulbeishim Migdulase, to be embarrassed and to have awe of God's greatness. She'ein lo seif v'tachlis, that God is infinite. I'll explain in a second. Upachad Hashem b'libay, and the fear of God, the fright of God, the fear of God in your heart. Now, the Rebbe speaks over here about 2 levels of fear. We know there's fear and there's fright. Fear is when you think intellectually about how dangerous somebody is, how dangerous something is. It's a meditated awakening of fear. But pachad is a sudden fear. You're walking in the street and all of a sudden a dog jumps out at you. It's not premeditated, it's fright. That's more in the heart. Fear is also in the heart, but fear is a premeditated meditation into the greatness of Hashem to awaken the awesomeness of Hashem. And he said, that the Rebbe is saying over here, that when a person meditates, when you have father and mother of intellect, you awaken within yourself a fear, and then he continues, V'shuv yislayev libay ba'ava aza, and then you come to a second level of love Kadish be'esh, like a burning flame of fire. B'chasheka, with the desire, v'chafetz, and a wanting, v'chuk, and also desire. V'nefesh shekakas, and a nefesh that desires, l'gdulas ein zabaruch, to the greatness of God. Now the Rebbe is saying here very interesting points. And he's saying like this: the essential emotions of a person are love and fear. In fact, in a few lines now, the Rebbe is going to say all the other emotions are offshoots of love and fear. Love and fear as the two ultimate emotions of the person. First, the Rebbe says like this: when you meditate, you create a fear in your mind and heart, and then you create a love. Why is fear before love? It's very simple. In the order of the spheres, chesed and then gvura. Chesed is higher than gvura. Love is higher than fear. So if a person is working on it, what do you come to first? First you come to the lower level, which is fear. And then when you continue meditating, you come to a higher level, which is love. And therefore we say, Reish is Chochmah, the beginning of Chochmah is Yiras Hashem. Yira begins it. Why does Yira begin it? Because it's lower. It's an easier level to attain than love, which is a much greater level. And in fact, we know this in life also. Before children come to love a parent, they will first fear the parent. Before a child comes to love a teacher, they will respect and have awe and fear of the teacher, because it's a lower level to come to. It's an easier level to come to. Therefore, the Alter Rebbe says like this: there's seichel, which is called father and mother, and then you have the emotions, which is given birth through the seichel. That creates a fear by the person and a love. What does that love mean? Klais hanefesh, the longing of the soul. Like it says, nichsefa, I have longing. V'gam kolsa nafshi, my soul is longing to you. Or it says, sama nafshi lelukim, my soul is thirsty to God. Or like another says, sama locha nafshi, my soul is longing to you. These are all from Tilim. The longing that David HaMelech is speaking to God. V'atzimoyin hu miyisod ha'esh shebenefesh olikis. Okay? Meaning like this. If you remember in the first parak we learned, there's 4 major elements: fire, air, earth, and water. Generally speaking, intellect is cold and emotions are warm. Intellectual people usually are very cold. The greatness of an intellectual person is when he has feelings or he becomes emotional too. And therefore, even in English, there's an expression when somebody's very nervous, all emotional. In America, they say cool it. What do you mean cool it? How do you cool it? Cool it with your intellect. Take control of yourself with your intellect. Calm down. How do you calm down an emotion? The only way to calm down an emotion is with intellect. To say it's not so bad. Take it easy. You'll get over this. You'll survive it. Just take it easy. So therefore, the Alter Rebbe is going to say that thirst comes in the element of fire, and you say to and water is originally in the brain. That means Chochmah is more in the brain, and Ahava and Yira is more in the heart. That's more burning love, burning awe, burning fear. That's more in the level of the heart. Okay? And therefore, he says, Chochma is called Mayim of the Nefesh Olikis. And therefore, Chochma is called water. Ava and Yira is called Eish. An emotional person is always on fire. Even fear, you get on fire. Now, again, to explain, fear does not mean, and there's a lot of stories with Chassidim that became Chassidim, and they were reminiscing their earlier years before they learned Chassidus and before they had a connection to Chassidus. And this is already printed letter from the previous Rebbe to his daughter Rebbe Chaim Mushka, which is printed already, part of the letter. And they describe when they heard about fearing God. The Chassid said on himself, how did I picture that? He said, I pictured God like a ferocious buffalo about to rip me apart. That's how they feared God. Or you hear it in today's world, I better not do a sin because lightning is going to strike me. That is fear of God, but that's a childish fear of God. It's not a mature understanding. What do you think? God's going to give you lightning? God's a buffalo or a bull or an ox that's going to gore you to pieces? That's not what it is. Fear and awe is meditating into the greatness of Hashem to such an extent, I don't want to rebel against him. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe is soon going to say, love is the source of all positive mitzvahs, and fear is the source of all negative mitzvahs. And therefore, the first commandment was, I am God, your God, which is the source of all positive mitzvahs. The second one of the 10 commandments, that we hear those two from God himself, you should not have any other gods, which is the source of all negative commandments. So Chassidus explains, Alter Rebbe originates in Tanya and all over the place. Love, as we learned many times, meaning I want to become one with you. Remember, we learned many times, the word for love in Hebrew is ahava, which numerically equals 13. The word echad, 1 equals 13. What is love? We know somebody I love, I want to be with. I want to connect. How does a person connect to God? By doing a positive mitzvah. My action connects me to Hashem. It brings me closer to Hashem. How do I get to that level of understanding God's greatness, that I love him, and therefore I want to connect to him? Like you said before, through meditation. Chachma and Bina. Parents create children. Seichel creates emotions. Intellect creates emotion. Therefore, how can I come to the Ahavtas Hashem Elokecha? When I meditate, like we learned last week. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. When I meditate into the greatness of Hashem, he's so great, I want to be with him. I love him. I want to be with him. That's the source of positive mitzvahs. What is fear? Yira Sa'enish, what the Gemara speaks about, fear of punishment, is not the real level of fear. Some people won't sin. Why won't they sin? Because I'm going to get caught, I'm going to get lashes, or the courts will kill me, or God will kill me. That's not the real level of fear. That's an immature level of fear. And to give you a simple example, there's a mitzvah to honor your parents and to fear your parents. The Torah says, Ish ime va'av tiro. You have to fear your parents. We're talking about adults have to fear their parents. What do you think? The adults are afraid that their father and mother are going to whip them? What does it mean, fear? You're not allowed to sit in your parents' seat, which is part of the mitzvah of fear. You don't contradict what they say. That's fear, halachically. What is fear? I respect you. I'm in awe of you. And therefore, I don't want to rebel against you. And that's where the negative commandments come. Don't eat treif. Don't desecrate Shabbos. Don't do this. Don't do this. Because when I do, I'm actively rebelling against God. So now the Rebbe is explaining that you have the intellect creating the emotions, and therefore he says, the Shara Midas Kulam, all the other Midas, meaning Teferes, Netzach, Chod Yesod, and Malchus, in Anfei Ayira are the branches of fear and love, the Tuldosam and their offshoots, like he explains the summary. Okay? So far, the Rebbe explained Chachma and Bina as father and mother, giving birth to the feelings of fear and love. But he missed one, Das. The Rebbe said before, the third level of intellect is Das. What does Das mean? He says like this. But Das, and Das is very important. But Das, Himaloshin Va'adam Yoda as Chava. We mentioned this Monday night by the Chumash class, other times also. Adam knew Chava. That's the literal. What do you mean? He had relations with Chava and he gave birth. So what does Das mean? Loshin is kashrus v'is binding and connection. By the way, it's interesting. Now, the Rebbe uses both expressions, his kashrus and his chabrus. It's very interesting. His kashrus both mean binding and connecting, but there is a difference between the two. In Hebrew, the word kesher means a knot. How do I tie A to B with a rope? You know, you tie a rope, you make a knot, and A and B are now connected. They're connected, but they're still separate entities. When you tie two things together, they're connected, but they're two separate entities. His chabrus, chibur, is when you glue it. When you glue two things together, they're not two separate entities anymore. It's one entity. So he's saying, what's das? Now the Rebbe says, it's an expression of his kashrus, which means tying, but with two separate things, us and Hashem. His chabrus and connection, that we become one. And he says, what does this mean? He binds his mind, with a very strong, powerful tie. And he implants his mind, his thought, with strength, in the greatness of God. He never removes his mind from it. What is das? Now, it is a very profound concept what the Rebbe is saying. And let me preface it by saying a few things. You can have somebody that learns 10 hours a day, and yet it's not him. It's not him. What do you mean it's not him? The test of it is very simple. You close the book after the 10 hours of learning, and you walk into the street. What comes into your mind? What comes into your mind is who you are. You're learning 10 hours a day, but if you walk in the street, the book is closed. You're not bound to that learning, so then it's not you. Das is binding yourself, like we spoke the other night, feeling it, subjugating to it. It's subjective. You feel it. They tell a story. There was once a teacher that was a teacher for a certain farmer. And the farmer couldn't read. So whenever somebody sent the farmer a letter, the rabbi, the teacher, read the letter to the farmer. One time a letter comes and the teacher reads the letter and he says to the farmer, what does it say in the letter? I'm sorry to inform you that your father died. So the farmer fainted. So somebody asked him, the rabbi, the tutor, and said, you read the letter, why didn't you faint? You were the one that read it. He only heard it. So what's the obvious answer? It's his father, he feels it. The other guy might say, oh, I'm sorry to hear the news. But that doesn't mean you feel it. Das is when you feel it. I'll give you a simple example what that means. In life, you hear about somebody's tragedy and everybody will go, oh my God, that's so bad. I feel so bad for you. You know when you know that you feel bad? When you don't eat and sleep because of it. If you can go home and eat and sleep, then you didn't feel it. You don't feel the other person's pain. When you have pain, God forbid, when we have pain, we don't eat and sleep. What does it mean, feeling somebody else? You feel their pain is your pain, and their joy is your joy. What does Das mean when it comes to understanding Hashem? It's not enough to understand God. Meditate into the greatness of Hashem. Yes, I'll create a fear, I'll create a love. Without Das, without feeling it, becoming one with it, it's not going to last out, it ever says. And he says, Ki af mi shu chochem v'noven. Even a person has chochem and bina. Begdulas ein tzal into the greatness of Hashem. You can have this person that can meditate into the greatness of Hashem. But im lo yikashed daite, if he won't bind his mind, and implant his thought, with strength, and continuously, he will not give birth to true love and fear. And the Rebbe explains, what does it mean, not real love and fear? It won't last. It will come and go. Yes, you'll meditate. You'll create a love and fear of Hashem. But you know what? It might be pretty high for a few minutes, but it's not going to last. Why? Because the surge left. But if you bind yourself to the emotion that you created continuously, then you're not going to create, you're not going to create false illusions. You are going to create a real love and fear. And by the way, Chassidus explains, in order to feel God, we have to be God. Meaning, like we mentioned last time, a person that doesn't have a neshama, a godly soul, cannot feel God. They cannot become one with Hashem. We're a chosen nation. We have a neshama, chelek elokah mimal, a part of God. Because we have a neshama, which is a part of Hashem, we're able to feel God. A non-Jew can meditate and they can create a love and fear, but they cannot become one with it. Because in order to become one with God, you need to feel it. You need to have das. And that comes at bar and bas mitzvah, by the way, that level of das. By a ger, the neshama, by a convert, it was always a Yiddish neshama. Like we said, it says Gershin is Gayer. All the converts, halachic converts that converted were present when Hashem gave the Torah. Therefore, a convert has a neshama. It was just lost amongst the nations. And when he comes back, that neshama that he has and had is revealed. But it was always there. So his neshama is exactly equal to a Jew's. And he says, you're only going to give birth to false illusions, meaning not real, because if it's real, it lasts. Valkain, and therefore the Alter Rebbe did this parak. Hadas hukiyim hamidas. Das is the existence of the midas, the basis of the midas. V'chayusam, and the life of the midah. And therefore das, because it's like the mother of the feeling of intellect that creates a real feeling. Therefore das has in it chesed and gvura, love and fear, meaning ava v'anfeha, love and its branches, all the other midas that branch off love, v'yira v'anfeha, and fear and its branches. Okay, so now the Alter Rebbe basically in Perek Gimel described what the neshama is: intellect and emotions. By the way, in Torah Aron Pasach Liyod, the Alter Rebbe says this is still not the essence of the neshama. These are only like the revelations of the neshama in intellect and emotions. But here in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says this is the essence of this is what the neshama is composed of. So therefore, the neshama has intellect, the neshama has emotions. Intellect gives birth to the emotions. Chachma is the father, Bina is the mother. Chachma is the initial spark, Bina broadens it. That gives birth to midas, to love and fear, or fear and love, depending which way you're going. And that is the ultimate key to mitzvahs. And therefore, das is when you feel it. Now, this explains a fundamental aspect of Chabad Chasidus. Everybody understands the ultimate way of serving Hashem is with love and fear. If I love something, I'm going to do it much better. If I respect you with awe and fear, I'm going to be more hesitant to embarrass you or to do something that you don't want me to do. So the ultimate way of doing mitzvahs is with love and fear. The Alter Rebbe's philosophy of Chabad Chassidus is, how do you come to that love and fear? Other Chassidic groups, as we mentioned a long time ago, are called Chagas Chassidim, Chesed, the Midas. They come to Midas not through the intellectual levels. Why, by the way? They maintain that a Jew cannot understand God. It's too great to understand God. What did the Alter Rebbe accomplish in Chassidus Chabad? The Alter Rebbe says, you have a neshama, we have a neshama. We're able to understand because we have in our neshama Chachma, Bina, Das, because we come from that levels of godliness. And therefore we can create intellect on our level. And as Alter Rebbe is going to use the expression later, based on the source of your neshama. A greater neshama can have a greater understanding of God than we do. Lower neshamas have a loss, but they're not obligated to understand more. But then we need to feel it. And through the intellect, by giving birth to midas, especially with the level of das, then the emotions last, they're eternal, and they're what you accomplished, not the tzaddik giving it to you. When you work with your intellect to create emotions of love and fear of Hashem, you did it, and you worked on it, and you got it. It's the comparison if somebody teaches you something or you figured it out on your own. Figuring it on your own is much greater than being taught it. Why? Because you did it, and you become one with it. Okay, that's it for now. Mitzvah Hashem, Monday night, we'll see everybody. And by the way, I would appreciate if you show me more faces instead of just names. It's just easier when I talk to people. It's just easier than when I see a name and talk to written letters. So don't be embarrassed. I would like to see your name and your faces also. Anyway, have a good night and a great week. And Have a great month. All the best.
But Rabbi, sometimes it's a bad
Thanks,
hair
Rob.
day.
What?
Sometimes it's a bad hair day.
That's why they have shekels.
Men get it too,
Good
you
night,
know.
everybody. Good night. Everybody.
night.
Thanks, Rabbi. Good night. Good night, everybody. Good night.
Goodbye.
Good night.
Goodbye. Bye. Thanks so much.
Thank you.